Hello from the underground. How are you all? Good, I hope. Why are you here? God knows. Why am I here? Rah rah rah, blah blah blah. That's a difficult question, yes. Why do great novels persist? Why are we still left amongst all this rubbish, all this bric-a-brac? Why are we left amongst all this carnage with fantastic literature? Why indeed? That's a good question. There are more good questions that might yet complement that last one, and in sort of complicating the mess, make it easier to answer. Not ironically, but paradoxically. I think these awkward paradigms is where humans flourish, you know. It's really, really, really difficult to make sense of one confusing thing, but it's a little bit easier to make sense of two confusing things. And that could be just a proclivity to string together a sense of context, because that's really all we need to move forward. I hope that you note, dear listeners and readers, lovers of literature and free thought, critical thought alike, that this, what I want to espouse, is a call to recognition of, what's it called? Oh yeah, propaganda in all of its forms. That's it, really. Do we, as humans, thrive on propaganda? Yes, indeed we do. How does that relate to our love for literature? Well, I don't know. I think it would be fun to take a couple guesses together. If we take a couple stabs in the dark together, well, we could be wrong, but we could be wrong together. It's not such a bad thing. Maybe we love propaganda because... Maybe we love propaganda because we don't know how to speak for ourselves. That could be it. Maybe we're not familiar with our own voice, or maybe we're not comfortable with it. Maybe we know our own voice too well. Maybe that's the case. I'm a little bit sure that's a little bit of the case. The only reason that I think that might be a contender for a possible reason why we might love propaganda is because we know that there are such fantastic things to say. There are such fantastic things to represent. There are noble things. There are somehow truths that we may embody. But honestly, if there is actually such a thing as truth, that wouldn't really mean a whole lot if we didn't know how to express it. You know? If there is such a thing as truth that was emanated from we're going to be trudging into the realm of the divine at this point. If the divine did recognize itself and in that moment splintered off into all forms of creation, then then why should we be blind to it? Why should we be so alienated from our own origins? Well, there's a lot of good reasons, aren't there? There's plenty of good reasons. Fuck, there's money to be made, you know? Christ, there's a lot of money to be made. Recognizing your sovereignty as a splintered yet self-functioning whole representation of the divine, and being able to transmit that sense of self into the marketplace. I don't know how it works, but my gut, for what that's worth, tells me you'd probably do pretty well. You could do well for good, or you could do well for bad. You know, you could rally the stocks under the flag of self-recognition. Oh my God. People want to be good. You want to be good. I want to be good. I know you do. And I know I do. You know? God, perversion is fun. There's no doubt to that. And in fact, to that sentiment, I'll have a drink. Because I promise you, today we are not sober. No. But, you know, flip side that. If you had an idea of what this racket was based on, and you just wanted to turn that knowledge for a buck, you certainly could. I'm sure of that. So what are we talking about? We are talking about self-worth, individual realization in terms of what progress to the soul good literature might afford you. I swear to God, you are all of sterling worth. Each and every one of you. Your highest moments, your greatest joys could never be transcribed on any tablet. You know, the best you can do is just share your happiness, but to be able to pinpoint the origin and share that, I'm not sure that's possible. I think it takes incredible courage to go forward and make other people's lives better, because they can't know why. All we can do is just kind of take things as at a face value as far as actually recognizing the soul worth of a human being. Actions certainly speak louder than words. That's true, yeah. But where do we get our words? And what words do we want to take to purify through action, through the crucible of the heart? What words are going to motivate us to practice our love? What's Shel Silverstein? That's a good start. It's definitely a good start. Bill Watterson, that's a good start. It's a very good start. Lord Byron, that's not a very good start. If you want to get overwhelmed, go for it. I think hurrah for the underground. Everybody, a cheers to you. This is kind of a celebration of being overwhelmed, right? Absolutely overwhelmed. That is the motif for our generation. Nothing is simple for us. Nothing at all is simple for us. Black and white has never been more complicated. Well, let's have another drink and let's start into Gogol Dead Souls, shall we? Welcome and hello from the underground. That's a Malbec. We're having a Malbec today. It's very good. It's beautiful outside, actually. St. Paul's a little bit rowdy, but blah, blah, blah. Chapter the 3rd of... fuck me. Chapter the 3rd of Gogol Dead Souls. Meanwhile, Chichikov was sitting contentedly in his carriage, which had been rolling along the highway for some time. From the foregoing chapter, it is already clear what was the chief subject of the predilections and inclinations, and it is therefore no wonder that he was very soon immersed in it, body and soul. The plans, calculations, and reasons which were reflected on his face were apparently most agreeable, for they left traces of satisfied smiles every moment. Preoccupied with them, he paid no attention to his driver, who, satisfied with the reception given him by Manilov's household serfs, was making extremely sensible observations on the dappled gray side horse harnesses on the right side. This dappled gray horse was a very cunning animal, and merely pretended to be pulling, while the bay shaft horse and the light chestnut on the left-hand side, called assessor because he had been acquired from some assessor, labored with all their might, so that the pleasure they derived from their work could be perceived in their eyes. "Cunning, aren't you? Well, I'll be more cunning than you," said Salafan, standing up and flicking the whip at the slacker. "Do your work, you German pantaloon. The bay is an honest horse. He does his duty. I'd be glad to give him an extra measure of horse because he's an honest horse. And the assessor, too. He's a good horse. Now then, what are you shaking your ears for? Listen when you're spoken to, you fool. I shan't teach you nothing wrong, you lout. Look what he's crawling now." Here he again flicked him with a whip, saying, "Oh, you barbarians! You damned Bonapartes, you!" Then he shouted at all of them, "Away with you, my hearties!" and flicked his whip at all three of them, not by way of punishment, but to show them that he was pleased with them. Having given him that pleasure, he added again, addressing the dappled gray-side horse, "You think I don't know what you're up to? No, sir, you must deal fairly if you want to be treated with respect. Now, the servants of the gentleman we visited were good people. I'm glad to talk to a good man. With a good man, I'm always friends, the best of pals. Any time I'd be glad to have a cup of tea or a bite with a good man. Why, if he's a good man, everyone respects him. Take our master, for instance. Everyone respects him because, you see, he was in a government service. A collegiary counselor he is." Reasoning this way, Selifan at last got himself involved in most far-fetched abstractions. If Chikhachov had been listening, he would have learnt many details relating to himself personally, but his thoughts were so preoccupied with his own plan that it was only a loud clap of thunder that made him come down to earth and look around him. The whole sky was completely covered with clouds, and the dusty highway was sprinkled with drops of rain. Then another clap of thunder resounded more loudly, and this time nearly, and the rain suddenly poured down in bucketfuls. First, coming down in an oblique direction, it beat on one side of the carriage, and then on the other. Next, charging changing its tactics and coming down absolutely vertically, it began drumming on the top of the carriage, and finally, drops of rain began to splash against his face. This forced him to draw the leather curtains with two small round windows, whose purpose it was to afford a view of the landscape, and he ordered Sullivan to drive faster. Sullivan, interrupted in the middle of his speech, realized that this was not a time for dawdling. He pulled out some gray cloth rags from under the box, put them over his sleeves, caught hold of the reins, and shouted at his team of 3 horses who were scarcely moving their legs, for they felt pleasantly relaxed as a result of his edifying speeches. But for the life of him, Sullivan could not remember whether he had driven past 2 or 3 turnings. Thinking it over and trying to remember something of the road, he realized that he must have passed a great number of turnings. But as a Russian is never at a loss of what to do at a critical moment, he turned, without wasting any time on any further reflections, to the right at the first crossroad, and shouting at the horses, "Away with you, honest friends!" he set off at a gallop, without thinking where the road he had taken would lead him. The rain, however, seemed likely to go on for a long time. The dust of the road was very soon churned into mud, and every minute the horses found it harder to pull. Failing to catch sight of Sobokovich's village for a long time, Chichikov began to be seriously worried. According to his calculations, they should have arrived there long ago. He kept peering out of the carriage on either side, but it was so dark that one could see nothing. "Sullivan," he said at last, poking his head out of the carriage. "What is it, sir?" asked Sullivan. "Have a look. Can you see the village anywhere?" "No, sir, I can't see none nowhere." After which Sullivan, waving his whip about, struck up not what you might call a song, but something long drawn out that seemed to go on forever. Everything went into it. All the encouraging and inciting cries with which horses are regaled from one end of Russia to the other, all sorts of adjectives without discriminations, just as they happened to come first to his tongue. It went so far, indeed, that he began at last to call them secretaries. Meanwhile, Chichikov began to notice that the carriage was rocking from side to side and jostling him violently. That made him realize that they had turned off the road and were probably bumping along a recent furrowed field. Sullivan himself probably realized it too, but he never said a word. "Where are you driving, you rogue?" cried Chichikov. "What sort of road is this?" "Can't do a thing about it, sir. Look at the weather. Can't see my whip. I can't. It's so dark." Having said this, he wheeled the carriage round at such an angle that Chichikov was forced to hold on with both hands. It was only then that he noticed that Sullivan had a drop too many. "Stop! Stop!" he shouted at him. "You'll overturn us." "No, sir, I won't overturn you," said Sullivan. "It's bad to overturn people. I know that. No, sir, I won't overturn you at all." He then began to turn the carriage round gently. He kept turning it round and round till he finally tipped it over completely on its side. Chichikov tumbled out into the mud on his hands and knees. Sullivan, however, Sullivan did stop the horse. They would have stopped anyhow, because they were utterly exhausted. He was struck dumb at such an unforeseen accident. Getting off his box, he stopped dead in front of the carriage with his arms akimbo, while his master floundered in the mud and tried to scramble out of it. "Well, I never," said Sullivan, after a moment's reflection. "So it has overturned after all. You're as drunk as a cobbler," said Chichikov. No, sir, how could I be drunk? I know it's bad to be drunk. I just had a chat with a friend, seeing as how it's a good thing to have a chat with a good man. There's nothing wrong about it, is there? And we had a bite together. There's nothing wrong in having a bite, is there? One can have a bite with a good man. And what did I tell you last time when you got drunk? Said Chichikov. Forgotten, have you? Cheers. No, sir. How could I have forgotten? I know it's good for me, sir. I know it's no good to be drunk. I just had a chat with a good man, because I'll give you a thrashing if it'll teach you to have a chat with a good man. That's as you wish, sir, replied Sullivan, who was quite willing to agree to anything. If it's to be a thrashing, then a thrashing let it be. I don't mind, I'm sure. Why not give a fellow a thrashing if he's deserved it? That's what a master's for. A thrashing's all right because a peasant, sir, likes to take liberties, and order, sir, must be preserved. Why, sir, if he deserved it, then thrash him. Why not thrash him? The master was completely at a loss how to reply to this kind of reasoning. But at that moment, fate seemed to have decided to take pity on him. The barking of dogs could be heard in the distance. Overcome with joy, Chichikov ordered Sullivan to whip up the horses. The Russian driver has an excellent scent that serves him better than his eyes. That is how it sometimes happens that, speeding along with his eyes shut, he always gets somewhere in the end. Sullivan, though he could not see a thing, directed the horses straight to the village, and stopped only when, the shafts of the carriage striking against the fence, it was absolutely impossible to drive any further. All Chichikov could see through the thick curtain of the pouring rain was something that looked like a roof. He sent Sullivan off to look for the gate, which, without a doubt, would have taken him a very long time to find, were it not that in Russia savage dogs do not do the work for porters. And these announced his arrival, with such a loud barking that he had to stop up his ears with his fingers. There was a glimmer of light in one of the windows, and its misty gleam, reaching the fence, showed our travelers the gates. Sullivan started knocking, and soon the wicket gate opened and a figure appeared covered in a peasant coat, and master and servant heard a hoarse peasant woman's voice saying, "Who's knocking? What's all this row?" "We're travelers, my good woman," replied Chichikov. "Put us up for the night, will you?" "A smart one, aren't you?" said the old woman. "What a time to come! This isn't an inn. It's the house of a lady." "I'm very sorry, my good woman, but you see, we've lost our way. We can't spend the night in this stope in such weather, can we?" "Yes, ma'am," added Sullivan. "It's a dark night and the weather's foul." "Shut up, you fool," said Chichikov. "And who are you?" asked the old woman. "A nobleman, my good woman." The word nobleman seemed to make the woman think it over for a while. "Wait, sir, I'll tell the mistress," she said, and in a couple of minutes she was back with a lantern in her hand. The gates were opened. A light appeared in another window. Driving into the courtyard, the carriage stopped before a small house, which it was difficult to make out in the darkness. Only half of it was lit up by the light of the windows. A large puddle could be seen in front of the house, on which the light from the same window fell directly. The rain was pattering loudly on the wooden roof, and flowed in rippling streams into the tub, specially placed to catch it. In the meantime, the dogs were barking in all sorts of voices. One of them, his head tossed upwards, was howling in such a drowned-out voice, so painstakingly, as though he was getting goodness only knows what wages for it. Another one snapping it out rapidly like a sacristan. Between them, like a postman's bell, the voice of what sounded like a puppy ragging out in a restless treble. All this was capped by a bass voice, probably of an elderly hound, endowed with a sturdy canine nature, for he was as hoarse as a bass profundo when a concert is in full blast, and the tenors, in their anxiety to take a high note, are standing on tiptoe, and every man in the choir is straining upward, tossing back his head, while the bass alone, his unshaven chin tucked into his necktie, squatting on his haunches and almost sinking into the floor, lets out from there a note which sets the window's panes shaking and rattling. From the very barking of the dogs composed of such musicians, it could be concluded that the village was of a decent size, but chilled to the bone and soaked to the skin, our hero could think of nothing but his bed. The moment the carriages came to a stop, he leapt out onto the steps, stumbled, and nearly fell. Another woman, a little younger than the first, but very like her, came out onto the steps. She conducted him to a room. Chichikov cast a couple of cursory glances round him. The room was hung with rather old striped wallpaper, pictures of some kinds of birds. Between the windows there were small old-fashioned looking-glasses in dark frames, in the shape of curled leaves. Behind each looking-glass was stuffed either a letter or an old pair of cards or a stocking. There was a clock on the wall with flowers painted on its face. Chichikov was too tired to notice anything else. He felt that his eyes were sticking together, as though someone had smeared them with honey. A moment later, the mistress of the house came in. She was an elderly woman, wearing a kind of nightcap hurriedly put on, and a piece of flannel round her neck, one of those dear old ladies, owners of small estates, who complain of bad harvests, losses, hold their heads lightly on one side, and yet, little by little, fill variegated canvas bags with money, and stow them away in different drawers. Silver rubles will be put in one little bag, 50 kopeck pieces in another, and 25 kopeck pieces in a third, though at first sight it seems as though there was nothing in the chest of drawers but linen and nightgowns and reels of cotton, not to mention an unpicked old-fashioned woman's coat put away for a time to be turned into a dress later on, if the old one should get scorched while baking cakes and meat and onion pasties for the holidays, or should simply wear out. But the dress will not get scorched or worn out, for the old lady is thrifty, and the coat is destined to lie unpicked for a long time, and will then be left in her will to a niece, together with a heap of other rubbish. Chichikov apologized for disturbing her in the unexpected arrival. "Not at all, not at all," said the mistress of the house. "And what terrible weather the good Lord has brought you. Such a dreadful storm." I'm sorry for going Irish. My accents are fucked. I am sorry. I just love this book. You ought to have something to eat before your journey. It's so late that we can't get anything ready for you. The old lady's words were interrupted by such a strange hissing around what the visitor was almost alarmed. The noise was not unlike the noise made by a room full of snakes. But, looking up, he was reassured, for he realized that the clock on the wall had taken it into his head to strike. The hissing sound was followed immediately by a wheezing, and finally, straining with all his might, the clock struck 2, with a sound as though someone was hitting a cracked earthenware pot with a stick, after which it went on again, ticking quietly to right and left. Chichikov thanked the old lady and told her that he did not want anything. that she was not to trouble, and that all he asked was for a bed. All he wanted to know was into what parts he had strayed, and whether it was far from here to the estate of Sobakovich. The old lady replied that she had never heard the name, and that there was no such landowner. "But you know Manilov, don't you?" said Chichikov. "And who is Manilov?" "A landowner, man." "No, I've never heard of him. There's no such landowner here." "Who are the landowners here?" "Bobrov, Svinyin, Konopatkiv, Karpatkin, Triparkin, Pleshkakov." "Are they well-to-do or not?" "No, sir. I'm afraid there aren't very rich people here. Some own 20 serfs, other 30, but as for owning 100, there are none such here." Chichikov perceived that he had got into the real wilds. Good enough place to drink. As far as the real wilds go. "Can you tell me at least how far it is to town?" "About 50 miles, I suppose." "I'm very sorry, sir. I have nothing for you to eat. Would you like some tea, perhaps?" "No, thank you, ma'am. I don't want anything except a bed." "I suppose after such a journey you would be wanting a rest badly." "You can lie down here, sir, on the sofa. I say, Fetinia, fetch a feather bed, pillows, and a sheet." "But awful weather God has sent us, sir." "What thunder! I had a candle burning before the icon all night." "Good heavens, sir! All your back inside is covered with mud like a hog's." "Thank God I'm only muddy. I must be grateful I have no ribs broken." "Dear me, how awful!" "But shouldn't your back be rubbed with something?" "No, thank you, ma'am. Don't trouble. Just tell your maid to dry and clean my clothes." "Do you hear, Fetinia?" said the mistress, addressing the woman who had come out of the steps with a candle, and who had managed to drag in a feather bed, and after beating it up with her hands on both sides, let loose a whole shower of feathers all over the room. "Take the gentleman's coat and underwear, and dry them first in front of the fires, as you used to for your late master, and afterwards have them well brushed and beaten." "Yes, ma'am," said Fetinia, spreading a sheet over the feather bed and laying down the pillows. "Well, here's your bed all ready for you, sir," said the old lady. "Good night, sir. Sleep well. Are you sure you don't want anything else? Perhaps you're used to having your heels tickled for the night?" "My late husband could not get to sleep without it." But the visitor refused to have his heels tickled as well. As soon as the mistress of the house had gone out of the room, he hastened to undress at once, giving Fetinia all his stripped-off trappings, upper and lower, and Fetinia, wishing him good night, too, carried off all these wet accoutrements. Left alone, he glanced not without satisfaction at his bed, which almost reaching the ceiling. Fetinia was obviously a past master of the art of beating up a feather bed. When, putting a chair beside it, he climbed into the bed, it sank almost to the floor under the weight, and the feathers, forced out at all the seams, flew all over the room. Putting out the candle, he pulled the cotton quilt over him, and, curling up under it, he fell asleep at once. He woke rather late next morning. The sun was shining straight into his eyes, and the flies, which had been quietly asleep on the walls and the ceiling the night before, had now turned their attention to him. One of them sat down on his lip, another on his ear. A third was trying to settle on his eye, while the one who had the temerity to settle close to his nostrils, he had, in his sleep, drawn up into his nose, which made him sneeze violently, and that was really why he had waken up. Glancing around his room, he now perceived that his pictures were not all of birds. Among them hung a portrait of Field Marshal Kutuzov and an oil painting of an old gentleman with red cuffs on his uniform, as worn in the reign of Paul I. The clock began hissing again and struck 10. A woman's face appeared through the door and immediately disappeared, for in his eagerness to have a more peaceful sleep, Chichikov had thrown off absolutely everything. The face that peered in seemed to him somehow familiar. He tried to remember. He tried to remember who it could be, and at last realized that it was the mistress of the house. He pulled on his shirt. His clothes, dried and brushed, were lying beside him. Having dressed, he went up to the looking-glass and sneezed again so loudly that a turkey cock who had come up to the window at that moment, the window was very near the ground, suddenly began gobbling something very quickly to him in a strange language, probably saying, "Bless you, sir," to which Chichikov replied by calling him a damn fool. Going up to the window, he began to contemplate the scenes before him. The window almost looked on the hen run, at least in the narrow little yard was filled with all sorts of domestic birds and every kind of domestic animal. There were hundreds of turkeys and hens. Among them a cock was strutting about with measured steps, shaking his comb and turning his head on one side as though listening to something. A sow was there, too, with her family, rooting about in a heap of rubbish. She devoured a chick in passing, and, without even noticing it, went on gobbling the rinds of watermelons as before. This small yard, or hen run, was surrounded by a wooden fence, beyond which stretched an extensive kitchen garden with cabbages, onions, beetroot, and other household vegetables. Here and there above the kitchen, garden apple trees and other fruit trees were scattered, covered with nets to protect them from the magpies and sparrows. The sparrows were flying in huge oblique clouds from one place to another. With the same end in view, several scarecrows had been set up on long poles with outstretched arms. One of them was wearing a bonnet belonging to the mistress of the house herself. Beyond the kitchen garden were the peasants' cottages, which, though scattered in all directions and not arranged in regular streets, showed, from what Chichikov could observe, that the inhabitants were quite well off, for they were well kept. Where the planks on the roof had decayed, they had been replaced everywhere by new ones. The gates were nowhere lopsided, and the peasants' covered barns facing him he noticed an almost new spare cart in one and as many as two in another. "Why, her village is not at all so small," he said to himself, and once made up his mind to have a good talk with the lady of the house and to get to know her better. He glanced about the crack in the door out of which the head had appeared, and, seeing her sitting at the tea table, went into her with a cheerful and friendly expression on his face. I'm afraid we don't have enough wine to ourselves to appreciate, not enough to appreciate the familiar settings. Not enough wine to appreciate the hospitality. I think that's the best way of putting it. You should probably seeing double if you're going to attempt reading this book. Anyways, Crimines. We're on chapter 57. Excuse me. Burlap. Good morning, sir. Have you slept well? Said the old lady, rising from her chair. She was better dressed than on the night before, in a dark dress and no longer in a nightcap, but she still had something wrapped around her neck. Thank you, very well indeed, said Chichikov, sitting down in an armchair. And you, ma'am? Very badly, my dear sir. Oh, why is that? Insomnia, sir. I've an awful pain in my back and my legs, too. Keeps aching above the ankle. Oh, that will pass, ma'am, that will pass. You mustn't take any notice of it. God grant it may. I've been rubbing it with lard and bathing it with turpentine. And what will you have for tea, sir? There's some fruit brandy in the decanter. That's not a bad idea at all, my dear lady. Let's have some fruit brandy by all means. The reader, I suppose, has already noticed that in spite of his friendly manner, Chichikov was talking to her much more freely than to Manilov, and did not stand on ceremony at all. It must be said that if we in Russia have not caught up with foreigners in some things, we have far outstripped them in the art of behavior. It is quite impossible to enumerate all the shades and subtleties of our manners. No Frenchman or German will ever grasp or even suspect all the peculiarities or distinctions. He will speak in almost the same tone of voice and almost the same language to a millionaire or a small tobacconist. Though, of course, at heart, he will do his utmost to grovel before the former. But with us, it is quite different. We have clever fellows who talk in quite a different way to the landowner with 200 serfs, and to one with 300 serfs, and to one will talk... And to one with 300, they will talk differently again from the way they will talk with the one with 500, and in a different way again from one with 800. In short, even if the number were to grow to 1,000,000, they would still find different shades for it. Let us, for instance, imagine some governing office, not here, but in some Ruritanian kingdom. And let us also suppose that this office has a chief. Please, have a look at him as he sits among his subordinates. Why, you would be so awe-stricken that you would not be able to utter a single word. Pride and nobility, and what else does not his face express? All veritable Prometheus. Looks like an eagle, walks with measured, smooth steps, but that very eagle, when he has left his office and is approaching the office of his own chief, scurries along like a partridge, with papers under his arms, as fast as his legs will carry him. In society and at an evening party, if everyone is of a lower rank, our Prometheus remains a Prometheus. But if they are ever so little above him, our Prometheus undergoes a metamorphosis, such as even Ovid never thought of. A fly, less than a fly. He has reduced himself to a grain of sand. Jesus fuck. In society and at an evening party, if everyone is of a lower rank, our Prometheus remains a Prometheus. But if they are even so little above him, our Prometheus undergoes a metamorphosis, such as even Ovid never thought of. A fly, less than a fly. He has reduced himself to a grain of sand. But, you say to yourself, looking at him, this can't be Ivan Petrovich. Ivan Petrovich is much taller, while this man is short and thin. Ivan Petrovich talks in a loud, deep voice and never laughs, while this one talks in goodness only knows what sort of a voice. Peeps like a bird and keeps laughing all the time. You go nearer, you look. It is Ivan Petrovich after all. It is Ivan Petrovich after all. Aha, you think to yourself. However, let us return to the characters of our story. Chichikov, as we have seen, has decided not to stand on ceremony at all, and so, taking the cup of tea in his hand and pouring some of the brandy into it, he began to speak in this manner. You have a nice little village, my dear lady. How many souls are there in it? Souls, sir? Why, I should think about 80 in told, said the old lady. But the trouble is, the times are bad. Last year, too, you see, there was such a terribly bad harvest. Again, I'm confusing. I'm sorry. My narrative is totally flawed. The peasants, however, look sturdy enough, and their cottages are well built. But, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask your name, ma'am. I was in such a state, arriving in the middle of the night. Korobachka, a collegiate secretary's widow, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. And your Christian name and patronymic? Natasya Petrovna. Natasya Petrovna, a lovely name. Natasya Petrovna. An aunt of mine, my mother's sister, is called Natasya Petrovna. And what's your name, sir? Asked the lady landowner. You are not a tax assessor, are you? Oh, why, no, ma'am, answered Chichikov with a smile. I'm certainly not a tax assessor. I'm just traveling on a little business of my own. Oh, so you're a dealer? What a pity I sold all my honey to the merchants so cheaply. I expect you would have bought it all from me, sir. Oh, not your honey, I'm sorry to say. What else, then? Hemp? I'm afraid I haven't got much hemp left either. Not more than 25 pounds or so. No, ma'am, I'm after a different kind of merchandise. To me, fuck me. Yeah, you can see how I would do it in negotiating. No, ma'am, I'm after a different kind of merchandise. Tell me, have any of your peasants died? Dear sir, 18 of them, said the old lady, sighing. And all such excellent fellows, too. Hard workers, all of them. It's true that some have been born since, but they aren't much use, are they? They're such a small fry. But the tax assessor came. Must pay tax on every soul, he says. The peasants are dead, but you have to pay for them just as if they were alive. Last week my blacksmith was burnt. Such a clever blacksmith. Could do a locksmith work too. Did you have a fire, ma'am? The good Lord preserved us from such a calamity, sir. A fire would have been worse. No, sir. He caught fire himself. Something inside him caught fire. Must have had too much to drink. Only a blue flame came out of him, and he smoldered, and turned as black as coal. And he was such a clever blacksmith, too. And now I can't drive out at all. There's no one to shoe the horses. It's all God's will, ma'am, said Chichikov with a sigh. It's no use murmuring against God's wisdom. Why not let me have them, ma'am? Have whom, sir? Why, all these dead peasants. But how can I let you have them? Oh, quite simply. Or, if you like, you can sell them to me. I'll give you money for them. But how is that to be done? I'm sorry, I just can't make any sense of it. You don't want me to dig them out of the ground, do you? Chichikov realized that the old lady had gone a bit too far, and that it would be absolutely necessary to explain to her what it would all be about. In a few words, he made it clear to her that the transfer or the purchase would take place only on paper, and that the dead peasants would be registered as though they were living. But what do you want them for? Asked the old lady, staring goggle-eyed at him. Well, that's my affair. But they are dead. Why? Who said they were living? It's because they're dead that they're such a loss to you. You have to pay the tax on them. But now I relieve them. I will relieve you of all worry and expense. Do you understand? And I'll not only do that, I'll give you 15 rubles besides. Well, is it clear now? Oh, I really don't know, said the old lady, hesitating. You see, I've never sold to dead peasants before. I should think not. It would be a miracle if you could have sold them to anyone. Or do you think that there really is any profit to be made out of them? Well, no, of course I don't think that. What profit could there be in them? None whatever. The only thing that troubles me is that they are dead. The woman's a blockhead, it seems, Chichikov thought to himself. Now, look here, ma'am. Just think it over carefully. You're being ruined paying taxes for them as though they were living. Good gracious, sir, don't mention it, she put in quickly. Only 3 weeks ago I paid more than 150 rubles for them, besides having to grease the assessor's palm. Oh, well, there you are, ma'am. And now, take into consideration the fact that you won't have to bribe the assessor, because now I shall be paying for them, and not you. I shall be taking all the obligations on myself. I will even pay for the title deed. Do you understand that? The old lady thought it over. She thought the transaction certainly seemed profitable, but it was somehow a little too novel and unusual. That made her fear that the purchase might cheat her in some way. After all, he had arrived, goodness only knows how, from where, and in the middle of the night, too. Well, ma'am, is it a deal? Sorry. Well, ma'am, is it a deal? Where am I? Really, sir? I've never had occasion before to sell dead peasants. Living ones I did dispose of once. 3 years ago, I let our parish priest have 2 girls for 100 rubles each. And very grateful he was for them. They turned out to be fine workers. They can even weave table napkins. Well, it's not a question of the living. I've nothing to do with them. I'm asking for the dead. Really, sir? I'm very much afraid that I might be incurring some loss at first. Maybe you are deceiving me, sir, and I mean, perhaps they're worth more. Now, look here, ma'am. Dear me, you don't seem to have any sense at all. Do you think they can be worth? Just consider, they're nothing but dust. Do you understand that? Nothing but dust. Take any useless, worthless thing you can think of. Just an ordinary rag, for instance, and even a rag is worth something. At least you can sell it to a paper mill, but these are of no use whatsoever. Now, tell me yourself, what use are they? Well, that's quite true, sir. They're of no use whatsoever. But you see, the only thing that makes me hesitate is that they're dead. Good Lord, what a fool of a woman, Chichikov said to himself, beginning to lose his patience. Just try to get to terms with her. Made me sweat, the old woman did, damn her. And indeed, taking a handkerchief out of his pocket, he began mopping his perspiring brow. However, Chichikov need not be angry. Many a highly respectable man, even a statesman, turn out to be a perfect Korobochka in practice. Turn out to be a perfect Korobochka in practice. Once an idea has got into his head, he can't knock it out. However many arguments, as clear as daylight, you may put before him, they all rebound from him like a rubber ball from a wall. Having mopped his brow, Chichikov decided to try whatever he could not bring out. Chichikov decided to try whether he could not bring her to see reason in some other way. Either you don't want to understand what I'm talking about, ma'am, he said, or you simply speak like this on purpose, just for the sake of saying something. I'm giving you money. 15 rubles in notes. Do you understand? That's money, isn't it? You won't find it in the street, will you? Well, tell me, what did you sell your honey for? 12 rubles for 40 pounds. I'm afraid, ma'am, you've allowed yourself to be carried away a little bit. You didn't sell it for 12 rubles. Yes, I did. Well, there you are. That was for honey. You have been gathering it perhaps for a whole year. You gave it a lot of trouble, worry, anxiety. You had to rush about, catch the bees, feed them in the cellar all winter. But dead souls are something of this. But dead souls are not something of this world at all. They require no effort whatever on your part. If God's will that they should leave this world, bringing loss to your household, there you receive 12 rubles for your work and for the trouble. But here you'll get not 12, but 15 rubles for nothing at all, gratis, and not in silver, but in blue notes. After such powerful arguments, Chichikov had no doubt that the old lady would give in at last. Well, I don't know, replied the old lady. I'm such an inexperienced widow, you see. I think I'd better wait a little. Perhaps merchants will be coming along, and I shall be able to compare prices. For shame, ma'am, for shame. Why, it's simply disgraceful. Now, what are you talking about? Just think, who is going to buy them? Come, tell me what use any of them make of them. Well, perhaps they could be used for something on the farm in an emergency, replied the old lady, and without finishing what she had to say, stared open-mouthed at him in terror, wondering what he would say to that. Dead man on a farm? What will you be saying next? Why, do you mean to scare the sparrows at night in your garden kitchen? Lord have mercy upon me! What dreadful things to say, said the old woman, crossing herself. What else would you like to put them? Where else would you like to put them? Anyway, you realize, of course, that the bones and the grave, all that will be left to you. The transfer is only on paper. Well, what about it? What do you say? Give me some answer, at least. The old lady pondered again. What are you thinking about, ma'am? Well, sir, I just don't know what to do. I can't make up my mind about it. I'd better sell you some of my hemp. Hemp? What do I want your hemp for? Good Lord, ma'am. I'm asking you about something quite different, and you shove your hemp under my nose. There's nothing wrong with hemp. Next time I come, I'll buy your hemp too. So what is it to be, ma'am? Oh dear, such strange merchandise, such an unheard of thing to sell. At this point, Chichikov lost his patience completely, and in an anger banged his chair on the floor and told her to go to the devil. The old lady was extremely frightened of the devil. "Oh, don't mention it!" she cried, turning pale all over. "Leave him be! Only the night before last I kept dreaming all night of the evil one. You see, I tried to tell my fortune of cards after prayer, and it seemed God sent him to me as punishment. Such a nasty-looking creature, too, and his horns were longer than a bull's. I'm surprised you don't dream of them by the dozens. I was going to help you out of a feeling of a simple Christian charity, seeing a poor widow working her fingers to the bone, trying to make ends meet. But to hell with you and your village. The plague take it all." "Gracious me, what awful language," said the old lady, looking horrified at him. "Well, be damned. Really, you're... Not to put too fine a point on it, like a dog in a manger. It won't eat hay itself, and it won't let anyone else eat it. I was, as a matter of fact, thinking of buying all sorts of farm produce from you because, well, you see, I take government contracts too." Well, that was a lie. And though he had uttered it quite casually and on the spur of the moment, it turned out to be unexpectedly successful. The mention of government contracts made a strong impression on Miss Korobochka. "At least," she said in an almost imploring voice. "Why are you so angry? Had I known before that you were so short-tempered, I wouldn't have contradicted you at all." "Angry, am I? What is there to be angry about? The whole thing isn't worth a farthing, so why should I lose my temper over it? Oh, very well. I'm ready to let you have them at 15 roubles. Only, my dear sir, about those government contracts, if you should be wanting rye or buckwheat flour or any cereals or slaughtered animals, mind you don't forget me." "Well, no, of course I won't forget you, ma'am," he said, wiping away the perspiration that was streaming down his face. He asked her whether she had any lawyer or a friend in the town whom she could authorize to try up a deed of contract, a deed of purchase, and see to all the formalities. "Why, of course, the son of the archpriest, Father Kirill, who is a clerk on the law courts," said Korobochka. Chichikov asked her to write a letter authorizing the priest's son to act for her, and, to save unnecessary trouble, even volunteer to compose the letter himself. It would be a good thing, Miss Korobochka thought to herself meanwhile, if he would take my flour and cattle for the government. I must be nice to him. There's some dough left over from yesterday's evening, and I'd better go and tell Fatinya to make some pancakes. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to make some egg pasty too. Cook does it beautifully, and it doesn't take much time either." The mistress of the house went out to carry out her plans about the egg pasty, and very likely to add to it some other products of home baking and cooking, while Chichikov went into the drawing room in which he had spent the night in order to get the necessary papers in a box. In the drawing room, everything had been tidied up. The magnificent feather bed had been taken out, and the table had been laid in front of the sofa. Putting his box on the table, he sat down for a little rest, for he felt that he was wet with perspiration, as though he had fallen into a river. Everything he had on, from his shirt to his socks, was soaking wet. "Damn the old woman!" he said after a little rest as he opened his box. "She's nearly done for me." The author is quite sure that there are readers so inquisitive that they would like to learn about the plan and internal arrangements of the box. Well, why not satisfy them? Here, then, was its internal arrangements. In the middle was a little compartment for soap, and next to it 6 or 7 rows partitions for razors, and then come square compartments with a sandbox and an ink pot, and a little hollow for a boat out. A little hollowed out boat for pens, sealing wax, and other things that were a little on the long side. Then all sorts of little compartments with lids, and without lids, for things that were on the short side, full of visiting cards, funeral cards, theater tickets, and other things kept as souvenirs. The whole of the other, Let's not mistake ourselves. We're clearly drinking more. Yeah. Now, this, my friends, this is for you. Well, we shouldn't be surprised, should we? Let's take a little break together. Take a moment in respite and at least admit that everybody's pleasures, while probably not the cup of tea to everybody else's perspective, are at least indeed a pleasure, and thank God for those small things. If my cup of wine is equal to your whatever, I raise my cup of wine to your whatever. And God preserve us as we try to find what passage we were just on. Killadilla. It would be a good thing, Miss Korobachka thought to herself meanwhile, if he were to take my flour and kettle for the government. I must be nice to him. There's some dough left over from yesterday's evening, and I'd better go and tell Fatinia to make some pancakes. It wouldn't be a bad idea to make an egg pasty, too. Cook does it beautifully, and it doesn't take much time either. The mistress of the house went out to carry out her plan about the egg pasty, and very likely to add to it some other products of home baking and cooking, while Chichikov went into the drawing room, in which he had spent the night in order to get the necessary papers from the box. In the drawing room, everything had been tidied up. The magnificent feather beds had been taken out, and the table had been laid in front of the sofa. Putting his box on the table, and sat down for a little rest, for he felt that he was wet with perspiration, as though he had fallen into a river. Everything he had on, from his shirt to his socks, was soaking wet. "Damn the old woman," he said after a little rest as he opened his box. "She's nearly done for me." The author is quite sure that there are some readers so inquisitive that they would like to learn all about the plan and internal arrangement of the box. Well, why not satisfy them? Here, then, was the internal arrangement. In the very middle was a compartment for soap, and next to it, or 7 narrow partitions for razors, then came square compartments for a sandbox and an ink pot with a little hollowed-out boat for pens, sealing wax, and other things that were a little on the long side. Then all sorts of little compartments with lids and without lids, for things that went on the short side, full of visiting cards, funeral cards, theater tickets, and other things kept as souvenirs. The whole of the upper drawer of the box, with all its compartments, could be lifted out, and under it was revealed a little space filled with sheets of paper. Then followed the little secret drawer for money, which could be pulled out imperceptibly from the side of the box. It was always pulled out and moved back so quickly by Chichikov that it was impossible to say how much money there was in it. Chichikov got down to work at once and, having sharpened his quill, began to write. At that moment the old lady came in. "You've a nice box there, my dear sir," she said, sitting down beside him. "I expect you must have brought it from Moscow." "Yes, in Moscow," said Chichikov, continuing to write. "Oh, I knew it at once. The workmanship was excellent. The year before last my sister brought me little worn boots from the children from there. Such strong material. It's still good as new. Goodness, what a lot of stamped paper you have there," she went on, glancing into his box. And indeed, there was a great deal of stamped paper there. "Couldn't you make me a present of a sheet or two? I'm always short of it, and if I should want to send an application to the court, I've nothing to write it on." Chichikov explained to her that it wasn't that sort of paper, that it was meant for drawing up deeds of purchase and not applications. However, to keep her quiet, he gave her a sheet worth a ruble. Having written the letter, he gave it to her to sign and asked her for a short list of dead peasants. It turned out that the lady landowner kept neither notes nor lists, but knew them almost by heart. He made her dictate their names to him. Some of the peasants rather surprised him by their names, and even more by their nicknames, so that, hearing them for the first time, he paused for a moment before writing them down. He was particularly struck by one Peter Savelyev, disrespectful of troughs, and he could not help saying, "What a long one." Another had a nickname, blah 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 blah. Cowbricks attached to his name. Another simply appeared as Ivan the Wheel. As he was finishing writing, he drew in the air through his nose and caught an entrancing fragrance of something fried in butter. "Would you have a bite of something, sir?" asked the mistress of the house. Chichikov looked round and saw that the table was already spread with mushrooms, pies, fried eggs, curd tarts, potato cakes, pancakes, and pasties of all sorts of different fillings, some with onions, some with poppy seeds, some with curds, some with smelts, and goodness only knows what else. "Won't you have some egg pasties?" said the mistress of the house. Chichikov moved up to the pasty, and, after eating more than half of it on the spot, said how much he liked it. And, indeed, it was tasty enough by itself, and after all the fuss and bother with the old woman, seemed tastier still. "Some pancakes?" said the old lady. By a way of reply, Chichikov rolled 3 pancakes together, and, after dipping them in melted butter, put them into his mouth, wiping his lips and hands with a napkin. Having repeated this operation 3 times, he asked the mistress of the house to order his horses to be harnessed. Mrs. Korobachka at once dispatched Fetinya, telling her at the same time to bring some more hot pancakes. "Your pancakes are delicious, ma'am," said Chichikov, applying him to the hot ones as soon as they were brought in. "Oh, yes, they fry them very nicely in my house," said the old lady. "But the trouble is, you see, that the harvest was so bad and the flour's not very good. But why are you in such a hurry, sir?" she said, seeing that Chichikov was picking up his cap. "Why, the horses aren't harnessed yet." They will be harnessed, ma'am. They will be harnessed. My servants don't lose much time in harnessing them. So, please don't forget about the contract, sir. Oh, I won't, said Chichikov, going out into the passage. And why won't you buy any lard, sir? Said the old lady, following him into the passage. Buy it? Of course I'll buy it. Only later. I'll have plenty of lard by Christmas. Oh, we'll buy it. We'll buy everything. We'll buy your lard, too. You won't be wanting any feathers with you. I shall have plenty of feathers, too, by St. Philip's feast. Oh, good, said Chichikov. You see, sir, your carriage isn't ready yet, the old lady said when they had gone out into the steps. It will be ready presently. Only tell me, please, how to get to the neighborhood. How am I to do that? Excuse me, said the old lady. It's a bit difficult to explain. There are so many turnings, you see. Perhaps I'd better let you have a girl to show you the way. I expect you must have room for her in the box. Of course. Chichikov assured her that he would not carry off the girl, and, her mind at rest, Mrs. Korobotchka began scrutinizing everything in her yard. She stared at the housekeeper, who was carrying out a round wooden vessel with a narrow neck full of honey from the storehouse, at a peasant who appeared at the gate, and little by little was entirely absorbed in the life of the farm. But why spend so much time over Miss Korobotchka? Whether it's Korobotchka or Manilov, or their well-organized or disorganized households, away with them. For everything in this world is arranged in the most wonderful way. The gay will instantly turned to sadness if you will too long on it. And then goodness only knows what ideas might not come into your head. One might even begin to wonder whether Mrs. Korobotchka's station in the world is so very low on the endless ladder of human perfectibility, in the gulf really so low that separates her from the sister, inaccessibly protected from her by the walls of her aristocratic house, with its sweet-scented wrought iron staircase, its shining brass, mahogany and carpets, who yawns over her unfinished book. Who yawns over her unfinished book as she sits waiting for the right moment when she will be able to pay her visit to fashionable, witty society. There, she would do her best to show off her intelligence and express her views she has learned by heart, which views, according to fashion's decree, interest the town for a whole week, views which have a little to do with what is happening in her house and to her estates, ruined and entangled in debts as a result to her ignorance of farming, views about the political revolution which is about to break out in France, or about the last tedious of modern Catholicism. But away, 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 but away, but away, away. Why talk about it? Why is it that even in the midst of unthinking, gay, careless moments, quiet of different, wonderful mood suddenly descends upon one? The smile has had scarcely time to fade from a man's face when he is suddenly transformed into another man among the same people, and his face is lit up by quite a different light. "Ah, here's the carriage," cried Chichikov, seeing his carriage drawing up at last. "Why have you been dawdling so long there, you blockheads?" "I can see you haven't quite sobered up yet after your drunken bout yesterday." Solofan made no answer to this. "Goodbye, ma'am. But where's your girl?" "Hey, Pelageya," said the old lady to the girl of about 11, standing near the step of a frock of a home-dyed linen, with bare feet so thickly covered in fresh mud that they might have been mistaken for boots from a distance. "Show the gentleman the way." Cellophane helped the girl up to the box. She lingered for a moment on the gentleman's carriage steps, covering it with mud, and only then did she climb up to take her place beside Cellophane in the box. Chichikov put his foot on the step after her, and, tilting the carriage to the right as he did so, for he was a bit heavy, at last settled himself and said, "Oh, everything's all right. Goodbye, my dear lady." The horses set off. Cellophane was sullen all the way, and at the same time most attentive to his duties, which only happened after he had done something wrong or had been drunk. The horses had been wonderfully groomed. The collar on one of them, which had hitherto been put on in a torn condition, so that the oakum always peeped out under the leather, had been skillfully sewn up. He was silent all the way, merely whipping up the horses occasionally, but without addressing any edifying speeches to them, though no doubt the dippled grey would have liked to hear something instructive, for at those moments the reins lay rather slackly at the hands of the talkative driver, and the whip passed over their backs only as a matter of form. But on this occasion, only monumentous and unpleasant exclamations came from his gloomy lips, such as, Come on, you old crow, mind what you're going," and nothing else. Even the Bey and the assessor were dissatisfied at not hearing his addresses to them, such as "My hearties," or "Fine lads." The dappled grey felt some unpleasant blows to his broad, plump sides. "Look at the way he's carrying on," he thought to himself, twitching his ears a little. "He knows all right where to hit. He won't lash you simply across the back. He picks out the most tender spots, flicks you on the ears, or lashes you under the belly. To the right, is it?" was the curt question Cellophane addressed to the girl sitting beside him, pointing with his whip to the road, which the rain had turned into black mud between the fresh, bright green fields. No, I'll tell you when," replied the little girl. "Where now?" said Cellophane, when they got a little nearer. "That way," answered the girl, pointing with her head. "Well, you are a one," said Cellophane. "Well, that is to the right. She doesn't know which is right and which is left." Though it was a very fine day, the ground had become so muddy that the carriage wheels, as they drew up, were soon covered with it as they felt, which made the carriage considerably heavier. Besides, the soil was clayey and exceptionally sticky. That was the reason why they could not get out of the high road before midday. Without the little girl, they would have found even that difficult. For the roads crawled in all directions like crawfish shaken out of a sack, and Sullivan would have been forced to drive all over the place through no fault of his own. Soon the girl pointed out a grimy building in the distance and said, "There's the highway." "And what's that building?" said Sullivan. "A pub," said the little girl. "Oh, well," said Sullivan. "Now we'll find our way by ourselves. You'd better run home now." He stopped and helped her to get down, muttering through his teeth, "Oh, you black-footed creature." Chichikov gave her a brass farthing, and she set off back home, quite satisfied with having had a ride in the box. Chapter the 4th. And we are more drunk than we would be if we even wanted to read by ourselves. Which is pretty drunk. Anyway. Yeah. Buying dead people would be weird to me, that's for sure. Though I have got no idea what it means to preside over serfs. Can you guys imagine that? What would it be like to be taxed for people who are dead, who used to live on your estate that you told what to do? That's like you owned a company that fucking screen printed. You owned a company that pressed grapes into wine, and one of your employees who pressed grapes into wine died, and they lived on the block that you owned. This is, you understand, right? What? This is awesome. Like, IDK, my GFF